Hello, it's me, Bryce, and today I'm just going to be doing like an open letter to humans. But mainly we're going to be talking about what's wrong with humanity in a sense. So, first I'm going to start with ignorance. Ignorance is defined as the lack of knowledge. But that's not the real problem. A truly ignorant person lacks knowledge, so by simply telling them the truth, they no longer become ignorant. What's really worrying is the vast numbers of people that don't lack knowledge necessarily, but they have the wrong knowledge. Then when you try to explain the truth to them, they deny it, and then most of the time they call you ignorant as well. Ignorance like this can be found all over the place. Take into example protesters against the wage gap. This may seem like a real issue, woman being paid 70 cents per every dollar a man makes. But in reality, this is wrong or more misleading, sort of say. See, this wage gap was calculated by taking every cent earned by males and comparing it to every cent earned by females. Since more males work in the workforce than females, naturally there would be an earnings gap. However, discriminating wage based on gender for the same job is actually illegal under the Equal Pay Act of 1963. This is where ignorance is a danger. People start to believe things that are not true, and if that information seems dangerous, they start to rise up against it. This then leads to people protesting things that are not actually problems. Ever hear of Pizzagate? Well, it was a fake news article about how DNC chair John Podesta had a secret child sex ring in the back of a pizza restaurant. Due to the ignorance of people, someone decided to take matters into their own hands and shut up the pizza restaurant. So lack of information is nothing compared to having wrong information. Everyone hates it when people are stupid, but by far people hate people who are wrong even more. So the second thing I want to talk about is basing your opinions off others. Everyone has their opinion, but one thing you should never do is create your own opinions around someone else's. The reason this is a problem is people never create their own opinions anymore. It's all based on other people. Think of rumors at school. No matter how obviously false they are, people still believe them. Once people believe them, they start to form opinions about someone, so someone else's opinion about someone formulated into a rumor. Then from that rumor, you formulated your own opinion. So basically, you view someone a certain way because how someone else sees them. This is why Republicans and Democrats hate each other. Yes, there are sane people, but for the most part, they absolutely despise each other. But why? Well, someone probably said how the other party was dumb, people believed them, passed it on, and the cycle continued until vast numbers of people hated each other simply because someone else hated them. Take World War I. Contrary to popular belief, there was no actual bad guys, just countries fighting each other because the leaders hated each other. The people, however, did not, most notably shown in the Christmas truces. But over time, as the heads of state kept shouting how the other countries were powers of evil, people naturally started to agree with this. So once the war ended, the victors viciously took out their hatred on the losers. Unbeknownst to them, this same hatred would backfire on them, leading to an even bigger war. By far the worst people to be around are hypocrites, saying one thing and doing another. People love to make themselves look self-righteous, but spend enough time with them and you realize they're full of crap. Take the United States, for example. We take credit for helping end World War II, liberating concentration camps, and spreading democracy. But upon further research, you realize the U.S. completely shat on third world countries. With the help of the CIA, the U.S. successfully overthrew the democracies of Honduras and Guatemala, the help of Fruit Company, and in turn established dictators to take their place. The U.S. also talked about fighting terror, seemingly forgetting that they themselves funded militia groups to fight the invading Russians in Afghanistan, which later became Al-Qaeda. The U.S. also funded military groups to overtop Saddam Hussein in Iraq and fight for the rebels in the Syrian civil war. This militia group soon became ISIS. Now, hypocrisy can happen on a much smaller scale. As people want to make themselves look better, it's natural. But please, just do what you say. Take Spectrum, formerly Time Warner Cable. They preach customer satisfaction and reliable internet. But in turn, they never practice what they preach. The cable guy never comes on time, the internet is slow, and they still keep bringing pop-up ads on my computer. I know there are a lot more examples, but I felt these showed the most obvious hypocrisy, so that's why I showed it. Next, we have phonies. Personally, nothing makes me angrier than seeing someone do something good as a way to make themselves look better. That guy who takes a homeless man out to lunch only to brag about it on Twitter, he's not helping the homeless guy. He is helping himself. This is sadly clearly shown in National Honor Society. You need service hours to get in, and that's a big reason why some people join Service Club. Not to help people, but to get hours so they can make themselves look better. Just look at most Service Club events. Most of the volunteers are sitting around on their phones while one or two people actually help. This became worse with all the drives. I know drives are actually helpful, but people can now just buy and donate stuff for hours. They're not helping, they're buying their hours. This pisses me off, since people spend entire Saturdays telling children how to work a carnival game, while Bob simply buys a bunch of board games for the toy drive, and boom, enough hours for NHS. But phonies are sadly best shown by political parties. Every 4 years, candidates come crawling, helping the less fortunate, making sure it's in view of the media, and after the election, they leave, leaving the less fortunate to suffer in their poverty once again. The worst of all is when people use other people to make themselves look better. So, it was actually pretty hard to find a well-known example of someone using other people, so this example will do. Look at Stalin. The man caused the deaths of 40 million people, and people didn't like him that much. But you see, when people don't like you, an easy solution to this is to say at least you're not Hitler. Stalin used Hitler to make himself look better. You see, Hitler discriminated against Jewish minorities, leading to an estimated death toll of 15 million. Stalin used this to his advantage. People hate others who are discriminatory, and Stalin would never stoop that low as Hitler. Instead of killing a certain group of people, Stalin was not discriminatory, and just let everyone die. So even though both guys were pretty messed up dudes, Stalin used Hitler to make himself look better, even though Stalin killed 25 million more people. The worst problem humanity faces is the bystander effect. Knowingly seeing something awful going on and doing nothing. A kid gets bullied at school and no one helps him. A man robs a convenience store and shoots the cashier, and the bystanders do nothing. A genocide goes on in Rwanda. The United Nations does nothing. China kills people who speak freely. The rest of the world does nothing. The Ottoman Empire massacres Armenian minorities. The outside world is silent. For years, Hitler persecuted Jews and other minorities, years before the start of World War II. Yet the rest of the world did nothing. Doing something means everything. People just don't like to look at the bad, but that's the only way it gets fixed. No need to sugarcoat with examples, it's pretty self-explanatory. So by now, this video has been pretty critical of the human population. However, there are some good traits in humans I feel like I should discuss. Probably the first example that comes to mind is our endless pursuit for knowledge. Let's face it, with endless human stupidity comes endless potential for knowledge. See, way back in prehistoric times, there were these things called books. See, books were these things made of paper that contained words. When people read these words, their knowledge vastly expanded and they became smarter. Knowledge was so important to some people that they would risk their lives for it. Go back to 1614, Captain Cook was leading a voyage around what is today known as Australia. His cargo contained thousands of new plant and animal species he hoped to show off to the Royal Academy of Science. However, his ship ran into the Great Barrier Reef and soon began to take on water. Knowing knowledge was important, Cook ordered all useless items to be thrown overboard to help lift the ship off the reef. However, all the specimens were to remain untouched. They soon began to throw over even clean water to try and salvage the ship from the reef. They soon escaped, but not after losing a great deal of their supplies. But it was worth it. They kept all their specimens. Knowledge is important. The second best thing about humans is our determination. You see, if humans want something done, they will get it done in some form or another. Determination, I felt, was best exemplified in the Winter War fought between the Soviet Union and Finland in 1940. The Soviets were looking for oil reserves to help them in the war effort, and the neighboring country of Finland had oil, so an invasion pursued. While the biggest problem with invading a foreign nation is that the people are determined to stop you. The Soviets predicted they would control all of Finland in 2 months, but after 7, they had yet to breach the border due to heavy Finnish resistance. When I think of military powers, Finland doesn't really come to mind, but those Finns gave the Soviets a fight. Those people were so determined that groups of 8 to 10 Finnish farmers with simple homemade snipers would exterminate entire regiments of 400 to 500 Soviet soldiers. The Soviet Union eventually pushed through, but not after losing 40 times as many soldiers as the Finnish. And to put salt on the wound, turns out Finland never had any oil to begin with. Lastly, but probably the single best quality in humans, is the ability to make others laugh. You see, nothing cheers someone up like a good laugh, and boy do humans cause a lot of those. In recent years, memes have made a giant leap in the advancement of humanity, and their one goal is to make people laugh. Examples of humor are far too numerous, and some examples are just too short to put in this video, but probably the most humorous event I could think of was the Great Emu War. You see, Australia was having an emu problem, so they sent out the military to kill around 20,000 emus. Well, emus are the most destructive creatures ever created, so the Australian military had a lot of trouble killing them. After around a month and 10,000 rounds of ammunition and thousands of dollars practically thrown down the drain, the Australian army successfully came back with the corpses of 12 emus. So with the Australian military in retreat, it is safe to say the emus won the war. So, in all reality, there are many things wrong with humanity, but there are also a lot of good things as well. And if you're ever down or having a bad day, just remember, at least you didn't lose a war to emus.